There, I said it. Mic drop. Feels so much more important this week than I did 2 weeks ago. You know, I mean, I've joked about it being a little bit like having a wedding reception. I mean, there was so much logistical workings that went into getting my family there. And what's interesting, too, about my career and what I love about it is that the people that started out with me 36 years ago are still with me. And just making sure all of them were coming, and because there's so much a part of my story, and my songwriter buddy, Jeff Trott. I mean, there were just so many people that I wanted to be there, and so there was a lot of orchestrating. And then, of course, having to write a speech, and so getting through it, I didn't really have time to process it until I got home. And Monday and Tuesday, I stayed in bed, and I wrote, and yeah, I just kind of sat with it for a while. I just wrote things I wanted to remember from it. I also wrote people emails and thank you letters and stuff like that, so. For me, because largely my career has been about the people that brought me here, getting to sing with Willie was monumental. And I've sung with him a lot. In fact, one time I was walking through the airport probably 15 or 20 years ago, and we were coming home from Europe, and a customs guy stopped me, and I thought, oh shoot. And he stopped me just to tell me he thought I was doing a little too much with Willie Nelson. But you know, now as we all get older, it becomes more bittersweet, you know, and more, you know, those moments for me are extremely precious, you know, and so getting to sing with him and us being inducted together, I think that was a really, that was a big moment. And having Stevie Nicks, I mean, there were so many full circle moments. I mean, Stevie was somebody I loved when I was growing up, as was Willie, but Stevie was like my girl, right? She was like, she's kind of who I wanted to grow up to be. I wanted to grow up to be her or Linda Ronstadt or Keith Richards. Any one of those would have been great. And so getting, you know, not only knowing her, but having her be there to be a part of my induction. And then, of course, Peter Frampton, who was my first concert. So there were a lot of moments that I still feel like are just heavenly. I think that you know, that label of being a legacy artist didn't feel celebratory until I walked out on stage at Bonnaroo and saw 65,000 people younger than me singing the words to my songs. And that's when you realize, okay, your music is not the music of their generation, but it's the music that was a part of their growing up, you know, and they were exposed to that because of their parents or because of radio. And man, that is a gift, you know. That is, to be a part of a soundtrack to people's lives is, I couldn't even ask for anything more humbling than that. Yeah, well, my earliest memories of music were my parents. They were and still are very musical. My mom has an amazing voice, and she's always had an amazing voice. She's 86 now, and her voice is still incredible. My parents played in an amateur swing band. They came home, they played records all the time. I grew up laying on the floor next to the record player, you know, poring over albums. I also grew up before, I mean, my kids always joke about how old I am, and which is great. I mean, as long as we can keep joking about it, you know, and that I make light of it, and I tell them, yeah, but I'm really only 36 on the inside. You know, it's a bit of a buffer, but you know, I tell them, look, I grew up when music was a thing you held, and you also paid for it, and you shared it with all your friends, and it was such a communal experience. And it was, like I said in my speech, you know, it wasn't about likes. It was about who had the best records, you know, who got the record first. And those are my earliest memories of like poring over James Taylor and Carole King and Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and getting turned on to Bob Dylan and, you know, during Blonde on Blonde and Let It Bleed and Exile and Linda Ronstadt, and seeing Bonnie Raitt playing a guitar and going, oh, I think I can do that. And, you know, music, all of that music marked my life. I mean, Christmases were about the list of albums that you wanted, you know, and there's something really, you know, beautiful about that. I hope that kids have that experience now. I think with the phone being our 11th appendage or whatever, it's you know, I don't know that people feel the evolution of the personality through music like I did. For me, my personality was really formed socially through music, you know, and we cruised up and down Main Street, and what we heard marked our summers, you know. It's just, it's such a physical experience. And it, you know, now when I hear some of those songs, like when I hear Supertramp or when I hear like the Eagles or I mean, I know exactly where I was. I know exactly who I was with and what we were doing. And I hope people still have that experience, that kids still have that experience, that a whole song is something that we can listen to as opposed to not just the 6 seconds that keeps our interest, you know. Well, the Eagles were, you know, when I was growing up, a lot of what got played on the radio in our hometown was very country. And it did ultimately go from like Johnny Cash and Waylon and Willie, and then it started becoming like country pop when you had like Patsy, and it moved. But what was happening at popular radio that I felt like was a connection to that were the Eagles and even the Rolling Stones when they were doing Let It Bleed and Exile, and Emmylou and the Flying Burrito Brothers, and that stuff for me, it made sense. It was logical for me, and I could learn every word, and the words that were written to like the Eagles songs were some of the greatest lyrics of all time, you know. And then when I met Don and I played him some of my material, he was like, I'd gotten signed to a publishing deal, and I had some people that were cutting my songs, like Tina Turner cut one, and then Celine Dion cut one, and Phil Collins had one, and Eric Clapton had one on hold, and he's like, you need to hang on to your best work and take that work and make that be your signature. And it did, you know, having somebody of that stature believe in me made a big difference. And then he took me on the road with him, and I continued to work on my own music. And it was the first time I had somebody say, you're not just good as a songwriter, you're good for you. And that changed the way I looked at my artistry. Yes, I do. I was 13, and I entered into a competition for the best song for the state of Missouri. And I got an honorable mention, which I think is probably what every kid that entered into it got. But I think I still have it. I think my mom still has the sheet music to it. I mean, I wrote it out and everything, so. You know, I would love to say that I was a kid that always knew I was going to become an artist. I was going to like become famous. This was the trajectory I was on, but I was not. Music was, I studied music. I could play by ear, so I wasn't great as a classically trained, but I did major in it. My parents were like, get your degree so you have something to fall back on, which is always like when you fail, you got a livelihood, you know. But it was just this thing I always did. It was the thing that I felt I knew myself. I was the most familiar with myself when I was singing or writing, even other people's material. I mean, I was in cover bands. I learned how to sing and how to write by learning other people's material, which is one of the things I always tell, you know, I've done a lot of songwriter talks with kids, and I always say, man, I don't know if they do it anymore, but cover bands are incredible because when I was growing up, you learned I mean, you didn't learn the Great American Songbook, but you learned the pop songbook. You learned all of Motown, all of Stax. You learned what was on the radio, and that just by osmosis, I think, teaches you about crafting. You know, I think if you can learn crafting and you have the artist side of you that is broken but also fearless and feels the urgency to express, then you've got that perfect combination, you know. And I loved my references. I still love my references, you know. I never walk into a studio where I don't have a Bob Dylan lyric book and a Leonard Cohen lyric book and 5 albums that I say, this is the template. This is where I want to be heading while I'm making the record. And for me, there's safety in that, but there's also like just a pool of inspiration by having those parameters and those influencers in there. You know, I had a tape of songs that I really loved, but the problem with them was that we did them on Performer program, which was the precursor to Pro Tools, and it was very slick. I gave that body of work to Hugh Padgham, who was so monumental in starting my career. He took me into A&M Records. He's like, I want to do this record. And the problem with it was I wasn't really sure who I was yet, but I was pretty sure who I wasn't. And so I made a whole album that I felt like represented me in such a professionally slick way that I basically begged the record label to let me have another chance. Those songs did wind up getting, there was a song on there that Winona cut, there was a song that Tina Turner cut, and after that, I think things started to fall differently for me. I met Don. I did some backup work for him, and he heard those songs, and he said, look, you need to not let your songs go away to other people. That was a moment. I also started writing with Bill Bottrell, and that sort of helped me to get my bearings again. I think part of my learning process was doing something and going, that's not what I want to do. So this must be what I want to do. And it took me a while to actually just figure out who I was. That being said, thank God there wasn't YouTube. You know, there was none of that. I had a lot of years in there where I could sort of figure out who I was, you know, but keep it going and keep learning and keep getting better and that kind of thing. I think I Shall Believe was a big moment for me, you know, and because making that first record was trial by fire at first, and it wound up being a huge learning experience for me, but one that also was, you know, it wasn't without its sores. You know, Bill and I wound up saying, okay, we're going to cocoon ourselves and make a record, and everybody's going to have to wait outside the door. And I Shall Believe was a moment where I felt like, okay, I've just laid everything bare. And that felt like, okay, I'm really revealing at this moment the 2 legs that I stand on, and you know what my pathos is and who I am. And it wasn't perfect, and that was even more on point. No, I'm not. You know, as I've gotten older, I really love the writing process. I love those uncomfortable nook and crannies. I like saying what people are thinking and don't want to say, and I feel like I think I'm more inspired to write now than I have ever been, and I think part of that is having traveled through a full life. You know, I had a full life before I was ever given a record deal. I was 28 when I got my record deal. I had jobs. I had been fired. You know, I don't know how many people can say that when you're building a life on social media. And I mean, I had waited tables all over. You know, I had been engaged. You know, I mean, there was a lot of living that happened before I made it, and then it really picked up speed when I did make it. And then now that I'm sort of on the other side of all of the journeying from real life stuff and also having cancer to adopting my boys, I feel like now just like the floodgates of heart and soul are open, and you know, as much as I hate the aging and how that sort of cancels you or disqualifies you, there is some freedom in that, in being able to not care. I think for me, the last album, which was Threads, it snowballed into this huge statement piece, you know, and it was a reflection, I think, of the last, you know, 40 years of my life, all the way back to the people I first listened to the people that sort of I was handing the baton on to. But it was a moment when I was singing a song I wrote years and years and years ago after going to Bosnia, called Redemption Day, and then having Johnny Cash record it and call me and say, look, I've recorded this song, to him passing away, to then us coming together and doing it posthumously, and feeling his presence in the recording booth, and just feeling like, I don't know how to follow this and feel this way again. It felt like I could just put it all down and say, this is what it is. And then from that moment forward, just write songs. I think making albums for me has been such a ritual and such a process of paying homage to the albums that I've loved. All Things Must Pass. I mean, monumental albums that felt to me like they had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Sign of the Times, Inner Visions. Making an album for me was like a journey, and every song that went on that album had something to do with that journey. And knowing that people don't listen to albums like that anymore, it just felt like it was futile to not only spend the time and the blood and sweat and tears, but also the money to not have people listen to it top to bottom in the fashion that I used to. So making, you know, writing a song and putting it out just felt like, okay, I'll just do what everybody else does. I'll tweet a song, or I'll, you know, post a song, as opposed to writing a book, you know. So until this album, which is coming out in March, and then it all changed. I feel like there is, as an artist, you know, there's no clear-cut way to define what inspiration is. There's crafting and there's inspiration, and sometimes they meet, sometimes they don't, you know. Sometimes it's analytical and it's methodical, and you have 3 people in a room and you write a song that day, and then you demo it and pitch it or whatever. And then there are those songs that you write by yourself and you don't know where they came from. You don't know exactly why you wrote it, like Redemption Day. That is not my typical way of writing a song, where it's stanza, 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 stanza. Particularly when I sat down to write a song about the heartache I was feeling about my engagement falling apart. But what came out was my response to what was happening in the world after having gone to, you know, you just don't know. And this album, which I'm getting ready to put out, is full of songs that were inspired, that were less of ego and more of divinity. And that's the only way I can explain it, where I feel like if people are searching for God, you find God in nature. Like, I can stand in front of a giant tree and just be awestruck. I mean, be actually physically moved by something beautiful. My kid took me out one morning as he was leaving for school. He ran inside and he's like, Mom, come outside. I came out and the whole sky was pink. And the 2 of us stood there next to his car before he went to school. And those moments you go, there is divinity. And it's just a matter of noticing it. And sometimes with songs, getting out of our own way, not thinking about, I got to write the greatest song, or what can I write in this verse that's going to, you know, just getting out of your own way is where the divinity or the inspiration seeps in. This album, called Evolution, started off with a couple of songs that were that for me. One of them was about AI, called Evolution. Another one was a song called Don't Walk Away, I mean, there's about 5 or 6 songs that I wrote during this period that I felt like I needed to record and put out. So that's where I got where I am. It seemed like all of a sudden there was lots of little stories leaking about the Beatles using AI, right? And then I heard there was I think it was on Instagram or something, a demonstration of how AI could write a song that sounded like Oasis, but have somebody else singing it. And it was pretty accurate. And then this young songwriter that I happened to work with on this record played me a demo that she wrote with 2 songwriters here in Nashville, and she needed a guy singer, so she got John Mayer for $5 AI. And I just was terrified. For me, because I have grown up before technology, most of my life was before technology, and I've also seen people change because of technology. I've seen the character and the of our humanity change. I've seen us jump on bandwagons based on non-truths and really vilify each other. I mean, I've seen great things come out of it too. I've seen movements that have come out of it that have joined people. But unless there is touch, unless there is eye-to-eye contact, anything that begins and ends in technology, to me, feels dangerous. And so that's where the song came from. You know, I remember Bette Midler years and years ago filing a lawsuit about sound-alikes because somebody had done a commercial that sounded like her voice. And she won. And that was something that for all artists was a protective piece of legislation. Well, we're so far beyond that now. And I feel like unless we have some moral center, some gravity that holds our feet to the earth, to the essence of who we are, that we're entering dangerous territory. I mean, for artists, I think artists in general have always been, artists and art have always been the place where we could look back on who we were at any given moment, and it's pretty well, you know, it's illustrated, it's cataloged throughout history, and I'm scared. There's no feeling if everything that you do is on this, because I can write something so hateful about you, and I won't feel what you feel. And so I find that there's a fine line between AI and what we are becoming if we cannot experience somebody else's experience from your words or my words. I can remember my kids go to a Christian-based school. I grew up Christian. I'm also an avid meditator. I find God in nature, but we had a big conversation about the Antichrist because in the Bible it's very illustrated, you know, the end of days and all that. And for me, the Antichrist is not a person, because what's making us the least Christ-like is our behavior when it comes to technology. And that, you know, that does worry me. That scares me. There, I said it. Mic drop. I had not thought about that. Weather Channel was one of those songs that I wrote by myself, and it was, it came from a very, very hard and scary place. I'd gone through a total, maybe the lowest moment in my life, and my management, you know, swept me up and quietly out of the eye of the public got me help, and I came home from that experience and wrote that song, and I play that song. I don't take it lightly because it's taken me years to understand how to navigate. You know, we're all experiencing it now, you know, except that we're arming ourselves. And the idea of you can't change the weather is, you know, I'm raising 2 boys. A lot of us are raising people, and to help them to understand that there are certain things you cannot change, but you are not alone, and you have people around you that you can trust and you can confide in. I mean, I always joke about my kids have a college fund and a therapy fund. I hope they use the college fund, but I really hope they use the therapy fund, you know, because it's hard to be alive and it's hard to feel and not grapple with the weight of that, you know, and we cannot fix things, but we can look around and just ask, where can I help somebody? And the blessing is always there. You know, the lyric of, I got friends who are telling me to comb out my hair, come on out and join the human race. And there are moments we don't feel like doing that. But the reality of it is, we all have people around us. We all have friends around us who hopefully, and being a friend to someone like that, hopefully we do keep checking in with those people that we know are hurting, you know. Maybe they don't need to brush their hair. Maybe they just need to come outside and stand under a tree, you know, share a cup of tea, or, you know, that we don't give up on each other. Music is a safer place for me to write because, for one thing, like writing a song, What I Can Do For You, which Bill Bottrell really encouraged me to write. He pulled it out of me. I think when you sit down and you write a song like that, you're not really thinking about who it's going to affect or what the outcome of it's going to be, because it's so personal. I've written songs like that where I didn't really think about the repercussions of it. And I've been dealt some repercussions. You know, I wrote about the Walmart thing with people going in and being able to buy cop killer bullets. I think just telling the truth feels instinctual, and especially if you've grown up listening to people write lyrics that are truthful, then you think, well, that's part of my job description. You know, you don't think about it until you have to defend it. But I wouldn't change anything. You know, I do feel like that any story that I have, any experience that I have, 99% of the people around me have had it, or 99% of the women in the world have experienced this in one way or another. All of our emotions are the same. Their pain, their grief, their loss, their joy, their happiness, their accomplishment. I mean, they're all emotions. The experiences might be different, but the emotions are the same. So there's always things to write about. And for me, finishing a song that feels like, okay, I told the whole story. It's almost like doing a deposition. I told the truth. I can't be sent to jail for perjuring myself, you know. And then once it goes out, you let go of it and just wish it well and hope that, you know, the alarm on your house works. This song called Where is a song that I've had since the Detours record. And he and I just wrote this song really quickly. We recorded it in my house in LA, in the very top floor. It was just a vocal acoustic demo on a computer. And I would periodically go back and listen to it, because I think for me, the idea of being free, you know, in Buddhist faith, having no attachment is where you find joy. Not having attachments to people, to things, and that's just hard for me. You know, I love my children like they are my own. Well, I know that that's really, in the grand scheme of things, they are not mine. They are theirs. They are God's. They chose me. You know, attachment is just something that we all grapple with. And the song is really, it asks the question, how, you know, if learning not to care is the only way we can learn to be free, then is that even possible? Anyway, on this record, I took the demo to Mike and I said, I need to put this song out. I need this to go on there with Evolution, I need this to go on there with Don't Walk Away. I need this to go on there with Broken Record. This is who I am, and this is a question I ask myself every single day. And he took the demo, which had lots of racket on it. You know, it wasn't perfect. And I say this, he Martin Scorsese'd all of my little screenplays and just made them cinematic and emotional, and it was great fun. I think You Can't Change the Weather I mean, honestly, I'll tell you what song I think really does illustrate who I am right now, and it's called Do It Again, and it's on this record, and it is the direct result to my having taken a guided mushroom trip, and I think in so many ways, if you're a person like me, and I think there are millions of people that are like me, who were raised Christian, who went through all kinds of phases of spiritual seeking, who realized at the end of the day that we are, you know, anyone who's looking for God's face, that God is love, and that we're going to mess up all through our lives, every day, but that we get a new day every time we're born. Every time I wake up in the morning, I have a new day, and I'm probably going to fuck it up, but I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to feel more open. I'm going to wake up the next day, and I'm going to, you know, have a new day, and that's where I'm at. You know, I feel like the only thing that we can know for certain in this life is that the gift is in helping. The gift is in communing, and I can do that. You know, I'm not going to do everything great, and I'm not going to do everything great every day, all the time, but I get a new day every day. Yeah, I mean, it's probably 6 months. You know, there was a lot of reflection before I did it, a lot of reflection after I did it. And, you know, at the end of the day, I have loved my search spiritually. I love all the enlightened beings, from Buddha to Muhammad to Siddhartha, obviously to Jesus, to Gandhi, to, you know, all those who preach seeking a higher level of vibration. I'm cool with, you know, I feel like I just want to know what it means to be open. So that's, you know, that song came from that place. Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many funny side notes to that song. The crew of people that were involved in starting the making of Tuesday Night Music Club, we were all literati. We were all, you know, no one understands how acutely talented we are. We drank, we went out, we hung out like at the Olive past, you know, past closing time. We conspiracy theorized. I mean, we were so heady, and this particular night we were walking around Pasadena. We had gone and gotten margaritas and had Mexican food and had tied one on and went to the bookstore and came home with this book called Fun, which was a poetry book by a guy named Wynn Cooper, who ultimately we found out was I guess an English professor in Vermont, I want to say. Anyway, we had this cool, like, Marvin Gaye meets Steelers Wheel groove going, and I just started singing the words. And the next day I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a new lyric for it. And I wrote like 5 full lyrics, and nothing had the spirit or the laissez-faire kind of throwaway feel about it. And so we wound up contacting Wynn Cooper, and we said, hey, I'm a nobody. Nobody's heard of you either. We're just gonna split this thing. Me and my crew will take 50 and you'll take 50. And then it wound up being huge. Another funny thing was I was big at alternative radio, and the head of promo at A&M said, I will quit if you put that out at pop radio. And they put it out, and he did quit. He went on to become a great big manager, so I've no doubt in some other things. But I mean, it was like, It was crazy, you know, it exploded. It was a song I never thought would even see the light of day. I think it illustrated what was happening. A lot of people were really losing faith in the old guard. George Sr. was running against this new guy, Bill Clinton. He was getting in office. People were, especially youth culture, had really lost faith. We'd fallen on hard times. There was like, even worse than it is now, a large chasm between the haves and the have-nots. And I think that song, you know, was a glimpse from the inside of a bar of somebody who was already kind of throwing the towel in. And it captured a moment, you know. And even though people didn't really understand necessarily the meaning of the lyric or where it was coming from, they honed in on this, all I want to do is have a little fun. Who can't relate to that? It just took off, you know. There's a whole story, a whole sort of story of living, you know, in that song. There are things I did change. In fact, it's funny on the song, Steve McQueen. We've got rock stars in the White House. All our pop stars look like porn. So that would have been like 25 years ago, probably. I mean, we've got liars in the White House. And I was scared. I was like, I'm afraid to say that. And then, you know, then we saw Bill Clinton in front of it. And I was just like, I should have just, you know, I should have just said it. You know, I did start sort of censoring myself a little bit. But, you know, in hindsight, no. I mean, in hindsight, you know, things are the way they are, and you know, that's that part of not having attachment to it. I have changed the lyrics to a lot of songs in concert. Yes. I would say one of the most important records for me growing up was, well, two records, Mudslide Slim and the Blue Horizon. That really, I think the singer-songwriter, the lay your soul bare context of that record set me on a course as a young kid. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. That record, I think, in a weird way, made me envision myself getting out of my hometown and traveling and seeing the world, you know, and I don't know, it opened something for me. And then another album that was monumental for me was All Things Must Pass, and I was in college when I got hip to that record, and I just poured over it. And there were a lot of songs on that record that I felt like were door openers for me. There were a lot of songs too along the way that I learned that sort of helped me understand chords, like Love's in Need of Love Today helped me to understand how you tell a story over chords that are very sophisticated. I think Your Song was the first song I ever learned on the guitar, and it was a piano song, and it made me figure out how to play a piano song on a guitar, and that song I played every time I walked out the door. Anytime I was at a piano bar, or doing a, you know, playing in a bar or whatever, there were just little markers along the way that I think kind of set me on a course. Soak Up the Sun was kind of an anomaly in that I was in New York at the time. I was struggling to finish this record. There was a lot of weird stuff going on, I thought, in the world with respect to, in my line of work, like on MTV and VH1, just a vast array of wealth being demonstrated in every video. And it seemed so weird to me that music was becoming what looked like we're all rich, and yet, wait a second, how are we going to write for people, give voice to people who aren't rich if all we do is demonstrate what it looks like to be rich, while the climate is tanking and while, you know, there's all these things going on, and that was the direct result of that. And even though the song was a fun song, there are nods all the way through it, especially to the climate, to I'm going to seize the moment, and I'm not going to miss this. I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to put in front of my face what is important. And that's where the song came from. Whether people got that or not, got that out of it, hard to know. But that's kind of the beauty of music, I think, and in some ways, in that you let go of it, and then you let people make of it how it relates to them, how it resonates with them. Winding Road is definitely one of those songs where that song's almost, 28 years old, and yet I found playing that through COVID and through the isolation of playing for people over a computer, and playing corporate gigs and playing for seminars and things, that song had so much more meaning, that every day is a winding road. And we're just working on trying to get to a place where we feel okay, and that song stemmed from a friend of mine killing himself. So you just don't know. I mean, you really don't know. You write from a place that is deep down. Maybe you bring some crafting to it. I try to. I like to write hooks. I like to write something that somebody can hear one time, and then the next time it comes around, be able to sing that chorus. To me, that's my go-to. But then there's that odd occasion where you get a weird song like Redemption Day, and then Johnny Cash goes and records it, and you can't believe your life. The One Woman Show is a journey through my brain. I mean, I wouldn't say that it is a singer-songwriter, and this song's about that, and that song's about this, and it is not like that. It is a total journey, and it stems around my having done the mushroom trip, and basically what I witnessed about myself. And it's really fun and really funny. I've written it, and we have a company that we're working with, and so hopefully in the next year or so it will be up and running. And I'm really excited about it. I hope people will come see it.